All right, and we're live. So feel free to introduce yourself.
Okay. Hey, everybody. My name is Sagui Silber, founder of Silberhaze Genetics. Just a small cannabis R&D company with a lot of legacy experience behind us and moving into the new age, trying to get all the information we all are looking for from this specific topic, regardless of where we are in it.
Right. So how long have you been doing it for?
Geez. I started with cannabis underage as a young man, preteen. I was introduced to it. Started collecting my seeds probably around the time I was in my mid-teens. Um, Getting into growing in my later teens. A lot of legacy industry in New York at that time. A lot of wholesale to retail. So not everything was just growing plants. Some of it was making purchases and helping friends and so on and so forth. From there, I got into it deeper when I met a gentleman with Crohn's who had not been accepted to the program during 2003 back in New York. And that kind of sparked my idea of how much medical is actually behind this, not really seeing what had happened other than the transformation in California in 96. And being still so distant from that in New York, it kind of felt like I was doing my due diligence to help this person, regardless of what the topic was. He just needed help. And so I started running BHO for him at a time when nobody was running concentrates, at least in that area. He had shown me his method, and I introduced him to purging, which I had a friend who was into concentrates who had ended up in the hospital from a collapsed lung about 3 months before I met the guy with Crohn's. So I had very much been aware of what some of the problems were with early concentrates and how not all of them were prepared correctly. And so we started purging back in 2003 in New York using a crock pot, until we could eliminate all of the bubbles and all the, I guess, all the stuff that's trapped in there, all the gases, everything that you don't want inside of the concentrate. And so we just keep bubbling it off until we were clean. That was a big eye opener for me, and it kind of changed me from being a recreational cannabis user into someone who was interested into the medical effects of it and how it could help people and how it could help various people. And I was introduced at that time to a strain called Applejack, which to today still works great for patients with Crohn's.
So what exactly would you call what you do, like your job? Like, would you say that your company is a dispensary or just a knowledge-based company, or what?
We are a cannabis genetics R&D company. We look at cannabis genetics that traveled from legacy to current markets. We look at land races. We look at preservation. We look at ethnobotany and see how other cultures are using it. We focus on terpenes. We focus on cannabinoids. We're currently starting to collect all of that information through working with third-party labs and trying to isolate our strains from other people's strains and what our stuff can do and maybe what other stuff can do also. So we're always interested. Our eyes are open. We see it from the craft side still. We see the need for recreational cannabis, but we also see the need for medical cannabis. And there really, for me, is not too much of a division in the sense that I think it starts as recreational and it moves to medical. And that coming from somebody who's been consuming for the last 30 years.
So effectively, you guys are like a research company, right?
Yes, we're a research company. We develop new strains. I've custom made a couple strains for people over the years. I've done custom work, like I said, with the gentleman with Crohn's, where I was just harvesting and Applejack, but at a time when nobody was working with just crowns, or rather like tops of plants, for the best medicine, instead of giving him all of the trim and the stuff from the bottom and running that into the BHO, we were running all of the best parts of the plant. So prime medicine for people. It was personalized healthcare at a time that it wasn't available.
What would you what would you say is the process of creating a new strain? Like what goes into that? Right? I'm sure it's a lot, but what would you say? Yeah.
Well, there is a lot. Where do you want to go with it? Are you looking for something that's going to be heavy on CBD? Or you're looking for something that's going to express more CBN? Are you looking for something that's going to express particular terpenes? Maybe you're looking for linalool because you need something to help you lay down at night, and you know that a good combination of linalool and myrcene is going to be effective regardless of whether you're looking at a hybrid or a sativa or an indica. You can judge yourself, I think, with proper education into these terpenes and cannabinoids, and start moving away from this indica sativa hybrid option. With a little bit more education behind you, you'll know what you're looking for.
Right. So let's just say from there, from knowing what you want, right? You start, let's just say, for example, the guy with Crohn's, right? That you were speaking about. How exactly, number one, does marijuana help, right? As a medicine? I don't really understand Crohn's disease. So, how would that help him, for example? How would you go about figuring that out? What would help him? What would be good for him?
Yeah, so I guess it comes down to pain relief. It comes down to what has been tried already by the patient, what experience they have. Are they new to cannabis, or are they a returning user? How much is their regular dosage? Are they currently a heavy consumer, or is this occasional? And then on top of all of these other things, what's their diet? What are their other consumables? Are they on other medications? There's a lot of things that go into it specifically. And so you probably want to start light with a lot of people. I believe one of your questions is when CBD or when THC, right? So CBD for me, kind of in the sense of lighter pain management or mitigation, in the sense that maybe you've got a CBD cream for arthritis, or a salve, or something that's more topical for mild pain. If you're getting into heavier pain, you may need something that's going to contain more THC in it to mitigate that type of pain. Cancer pains, other types of pains in the body that are continuous. I suffer from chronic pain in my lower back. It was funny you asked a question about that as well. And I've tried some CBD cream provided by others that's out there on the market, and it's well documented. It's a great product, but it doesn't do everything that I need. So I have to combo that with some type of cannabis that's heavier on THC in order to get the effect that I'm looking for pain relief. So again, with this, so getting back to your question about Crohn's specifically, I'll call him a patient. This patient was unable to eat specific foods or even generate hunger and appetite. So we were able to mitigate the pain while resuming that normal bodily control, so that way he could go and eat. Getting him to eat was difficult in itself. There are very limited foods that you can eat when you're on Crohn's. Everything upsets your stomach. Not everything is good for you. And so a lot of fresh foods, going back to that, probiotics, making sure that the diet in concert with what was going on in terms of cannabis was being used as whole body medicine. I don't look at it from one side. And I think that comes from my parents having background in different medicines as well. My father is an acupuncturist. My mother, when she was alive, she was an occupational therapist. And so I think a lot of that desire to want to help people feel better travels through them into me.
Well, with regard, okay, so for example, my dad, right, and my best friend, right, they both suffer from a lot of back pain, right? And just middle-aged guys in general suffer from a lot of back pain. Like you always hear about it. It's like, oh, my this hurts, my joints hurt, whatever. So, or even with athletes, right? Like, oh, my shins hurt, right? Shins been a big issue. But like with regards to back pain mainly, right? Because that's a big thing amongst people that go to the gym and do squats and stuff is back pain. So how exactly would you go about solving back pain? Is that something you would recommend a lot of people, some people?
So I would love to recommend it to everybody, but not everybody is good with it. Let's be honest. Some people have tried cannabis and it freaked them out. They felt complete loss of control. They had no other way of responding to the drug, and it didn't work out for them. And they're like, no, I'll never do that again, just Advil. And that could be because they tried smoking cannabis that was heavy in THC. Who knows? Maybe it didn't work for them. Maybe they need a CBD salve. Maybe they need the cream. And so stepping away from um, the psychoactive parts of THC and bringing themselves back to a CBD-based product might be the way to work for them. I always say to people, if you're new to it, start with the CBD, start with the cream, start with the salve, work that on your back, try that for a little bit. If that's not working, maybe add some CBD or even some CBN if it's later at night, because that'll help you sleep. It'll knock out the pain, help you to bed. So that's another answer for you if you asked that question before about my favorite cannabinoid. It's definitely CBN. I have trouble sleeping and it seems to work best for me. But at the same time, who knows what that's going to be for the other person? Maybe the other person gets onto CBN and it works completely like THCV, where all of a sudden they're bursting with energy and they're ready to run miles down the block. My buddy back from high school, he's ADHD, and it seems as though almost every medication that you try to provide him in terms of cannabis works opposite of what you thought it would be. So when you give him indicas, he's up and running. When you give him sativas, he's out cold. So I think everybody needs to have their experience with it, as well as to experience it from a low side and start to gradually bring themselves to a point of saying, okay, I have a journal and I've tried this and this doesn't work. So I'm going to try that instead, or I'm going to try this instead. Cannabis isn't a one size fits all solution for everybody. It really isn't. And I hope that it will be one day. I see a lot of moves in the medical field, bringing in new medications, a lot of publications about how it's effective in terms of cancer treatment and fighting against cancer. And that's my big focus right now, is trying to get into that field of research and work with others who are trying to focus on developing cancer medications from the cannabis. So each person is going to be different. And unfortunately, I think we're so early still with what we're allowed to do in terms of research and what we're collecting from people, that we still don't have enough to base ourselves beyond a book or two. And as these books come out, we'll continuously need to update them. There's a lot of information out there. My background is as a teacher. I have a bachelor's and master's in education. I spent a lot of time in the public system before developing myself this way. And during that time, I focused a lot on teaching myself about this in the background. It was a difficult time. There was not a lot of information the way there is now. Finding tidbits from internet snippets and the back of a High Times magazine in the mid-90s is not the same information that we have now. So I think that we've definitely made advancements, but are they enough?
Well, Yeah, one major issue that has come up a lot, on different shows that I've watched, on different people that have spoken about it, is cannabis psychosis, which is a very big problem from the way I can see it, like the way that people are explaining it. And some people will, respond very well to cannabis, like you're saying, as a medicine. But to your point about it not being for everybody, some people smoke one joint and they'll have anxiety for 2 years afterwards, right?
That can
And like
happen.
in
Oh,
very
yeah.
extreme cases, yeah. So what do you like? What do you know about that? What's your experience with that? Is it as common as people say?
Yeah, so I've actually been around friends who've experienced freakouts before from consumption of substance, whether it was cannabis or other, but specifically in this case, we'll stay to cannabis. Um, and the only thing you can do for them is be there and calm them down and just try to kind of walk them through it. We used to call it babysitting. I don't think that's a proper term nowadays. It was what you said to your buddy, when you felt like he couldn't handle himself. Am I babysitting you? And I regret saying it to a couple of my friends now, seeing where they are with cannabis, because it doesn't affect them the way that it affects me. And they are hypersensitive to it. They can't sit there. And the way that we used to, smoke in the old days, right? You just sit there and smoke with your buddies, and you'd smoke with your buddies, and you'd smoke with your, you'd keep smoking with your buddies. Some of them would drop off. Some of them would fall asleep. Some of them would go a little crazy from it. Um, Specifically, psychosis to the level of needing medical treatment, I have not seen anyone taken away for it. I have seen people lose, quote unquote, their minds, and need a heavy break and need to come back to normal. I believe that a lot of that happened during those early days of concentrates. Not everything was filtered the way it is now. The purity levels were not there, and you had a lot of, I don't want to say it like this, but there was trash in the product because nobody knew exactly what they were doing, how to refine it, what type of solutions to use. Did they want to go super critical? Were they using some type of a distillate, as well? And so there's a lot of differentiation in how the product is made, and I think that contributes to the psychosis as well as the intake. And a lot more people now smoking concentrates rather than just flower. So if you're going to be hitting a pen all day that's 80-90%, it's a lot different than smoking a joint maybe 2 or 3 times a day that's at 20%. Your effects are going to be much different. And I think that a lot of people don't realize how easy it is to over consume when you're taking concentrates in the form of a vape pen, and it just one hit after another, and all of a sudden you're somewhere else that you didn't even think you were going to get to. I think that lends a lot to the cannabis psychosis. I feel like when we step ourselves down from so much concentrate use, we'll find ourselves open to what the possibilities of flower allows for us, whether it's a dry vape or whether the consumption comes even from titration of tincture or even drinks or gummies. There's so many ways to consume, and there's so many ways to find that right combination for what works for you without allow. I think you can. I think you can prevent cannabis psychosis by proper instruction and proper education into cannabis as well, showing people that there are different ratios, allowing people access to different types of consumption material before they just go out there and say, well, I'm just going to smoke this pen and I'm just going to get lit up on 100% THC out of this pen because that's what I want. Well, did you learn it or want to learn about anything else? You have to ask that person. Maybe they just want what they want. Sometimes you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, that is something I was thinking about, and during the researching of this, is about carts and cartridges and THC cartridges, and that's a very big. At least it used to be a very big problem where people were even dying because of fake THC cartridges. And what I guess what's the situation with them, right? Are they good? Because I've even seen YouTube videos of people getting some like
Yeah.
when
So
products get tested, and it's always, you know, 50% like vitamin E, and then there's lead, and it's just a mess. So, what are your
just
thoughts?
yeah, just like I guess just like anything else, it can be something that you're not aware of. There's a lot of things out there that are, whether they're going to be carts made with real terps, carts made with um, hash rosin, carts that are just botanical carts where there's some added terps, but it's not live rosin, So the question becomes, who's making them? Are you doing your homework? Do you care about the company you're buying them from? Are you buying them off the street? Are you buying them in stores? There's a lot of questions there. I think dispensaries, especially medical dispensaries, hold themselves to the highest standard because they know exactly what's in there. They're labeling their stuff correctly. And don't get me wrong, there's still other stuff out there like lab shopping where these guys are like, hey, can you just rerun this for me until I get a different number? I don't. That's what these third parties are out there for. If you want your stuff checked, check it. If you believe that you're getting your stuff from a good source and nothing's happening to you in a bad or negative way, you might be on the right path. I've, through my entire life, obviously, there were no dispensaries when I started with cannabis, back in 94 in New York, to currently where I am, where I can walk out my front door and hit a dispensary with a rock, 5 feet away. They're available. I think that speaking to people inside of them, making the effort to learn is the consumer's best option, 100%. Distillates and carts and all of this other stuff that they're just pushing on people as far as product, is it good? I don't tend to think so. I tend to think that we're going to come back around to finding out that you're not gaining any entourage effect when you separate the plant to that level. You're not gaining full plant medicine when you separate the plant to that level. I believe there was a reason that we started cannabis consumption in the form of smoke about 7,000 years ago as humans, maybe even 5,000 years ago, but still from 5,000 years ago until 10, 15, 20 years ago, like nobody had carts. You know what I mean? We've been smoking it for thousands of years, but nobody had carts until like the last, let's even say 20 or 30, right? We'll give it that long just to cover it. What have we seen? We've seen people get popcorn lung. We've seen lung collapse. We've seen cannabis psychosis. We've seen a lot of things that didn't occur, or at least weren't reported to be occurring. So is that because more people smoke cannabis or consume cannabis now? Or is it because of the way we consume it? So there are always those questions that revolve around my head. And I was big on concentrates, absolutely 100%. 2003 to 2015 even. For 12 years that was the way for me. I couldn't get to where I needed to be without them. Now I'm back to flower. I think that's going to change for a lot of people too, in terms of age, in terms of where they are in their life. I think younger consumers can definitely handle concentrates in their body a little bit better than older consumers. Older consumers may need it because they're not getting high. They're not getting what they want out of just flower, so they're turning to these concentrates to get them to that level. Is it good? Probably not. Is it what they need? Well, that's up to them. I can't tell them that they're doing something good or bad for themselves. Only they know that, and they need to be realistic and honest and provide that feedback to themselves. You can't sit there and smoke every day and have no job and just try to, wing it through life and say that this is being, a beneficial substance in your life. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more, maybe something different, but change it up. See if there's a way to get past wherever it is that you're getting stuck, and I think that that happens to a lot of people who are cannabis consumers. They feel like they might hit this point of being stuck where um, the drug isn't working for them, and that could be just as anything else. You take Advil every day, all of a sudden by the end of the month, now you're popping doubles because you're not feeling a single pill anymore. So I always remind people, take breaks, stop, give yourself some time to reset. Your endocannabinoid system needs to reset too. It might be on the fritz. You might have overwired it. So
So this brings up something else about different methods of using cannabis, like topical, for example. And this is also just a curiosity question, but I've seen different THC soaps. I've seen stuff like that. So my question is, and a friend of mine made a joke about it where he's like, so what, you wash your hands and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I wash my hands and now I'm high, and that's a
yeah,
funny idea, but like, how would the soap actually benefit you as a,
how right. So how
as,
does it translate? A lot of cannabis products, a lot of cannabinoids, terpenes, a lot of properties that come into the full plant end up being antimicrobial, antifungal, anti-inflammatory. So you're seeing all of these properties being brought back out of the plant and into these medicines, whether they're soap, whether they're tincture. I just saw transdermal patches for the first time in my life, and I know they've been available for a while, but I can only imagine that having a transdermal patch would probably give you, a timed release, allowing for specific pain relief focused in one area. I would love to get a transdermal patch and try that out on my back. Absolutely. So, as far as the soap goes, I believe that the soap is probably based off of that idea that I was saying before of those properties, antimicrobial, antifungal, anti-inflammatory, all of these beneficial properties being rolled up into a product that can then be used and probably smells great too because it smells like cannabis. So who doesn't want to smell cannabis when you're washing your hands?
a lot of people probably don't. It doesn't smell that good.
No,
Yeah.
well, I'm saying depending
Yeah.
on if I would think that the product is being marketed to also people who are in the cannabis community who enjoy that smell as well. There's a lot of lemon, there's a lot of mango, there's a lot of pepper, a lot of woodsy smells, almost similar earth tones that you would find in natural cleaning products anyway. So be interesting to see how those line up. Um, Stuff like limonene is used consistently in cleaning products as a terpene and a scent, and you'll find it throughout various strains of cannabis. So maybe using our olfactory senses to kind of throw out some marketing tool or some hook on a new product, they might be working that kind of stuff too. Everybody's got a different um, idea of what they want to do in the cannabis industry. And I think that that's one of the greatest things about a new industry is that we can see all of these new ideas start to evolve, take place. You're going to see some fail, some succeed. And, the people have spoken. They're telling you what they want. I think that that's great. How do you get that kind of feedback? I've never seen that in any other industry in my life. I've been on this planet 42 years.
So I mean, like it seems like you've seen like a lot of people who really truly get helped by cannabis, right? You know,
Correct.
other than the man with Crohn's disease, but it just in general, it seems like a lot of people have really been helped by this. In your perspective, and I've even heard of people like I think Rob Gronkowski was talking about. He's like, "Oh, I've taken every painkiller imaginable," and he tries CBD cream, and it's like nothing, right? So, in terms of people with mental illnesses, right? Because we're talking a lot about physical illnesses, but in terms of mental illness, right? Where would cannabis place itself?
Uh, well, that depends how deep we are. Again, I think any case is individual. Is this somebody who is having some social anxiety and needs some sativa to come out of their shell? Or is this someone who is, um, probably better off without? Every case needs to be, it needs to be checked, and in a way where the person's being honest about the feedback that they're giving, but also through a professional if you're at that level. I think that there's no way of saying, I'm okay and I'm just going to smoke weed until I feel better. And now I'm worse. So what went wrong? So those types of people who maybe are looking for cannabis to be an all-in-one solution for them might want to consider combining that with meeting with a therapist or speaking to a counselor or a friend, something that would help them get more of a focus on what it is that's, um, the mental disturbance in this case. Is it something that's been checked by a psychologist or a psychiatrist, or is this something that you're trying to wean the person off of ADHD medication because you feel like as a naturalist that they're better off with Slurricane, and you're like, I'm going to write a prescription for this person for a strain, and I'm going to turn them on to that strain, and we're going to get them off their meds. It's been done. It's definitely good for physical addiction to medication, to wean people out from there. I don't know. I don't know how much on a mental side, um, it could play. I know that it works well for people with social anxiety. I know that it also has the opposite effect for certain people, where they will smoke and then all of a sudden they are very anxious and they do not want to be around anybody. So it will create, that type of cutoff from society. And some people don't want to, they don't want to be back out in society. I think that in itself might show some type of, mental, block or instability in the person, some distrust in them and how they view, society, and trying to help them back out of their shell in whichever way they need to come out. Whether they need that break and they're like, you know what, screw it, I'm just going in for as long as I'm in, or if they need help and they're actually asking for help, saying, let me out. How many of us were in isolation just due to COVID alone? You know, so I think that there's a lot of other social and, societal factors that play a role that maybe we don't always consider, but they need to be.
Right. So there's a video online, and this is related to what we're talking about. It's a video of a man, I believe, with Parkinson's disease, and he's just unable to function, right? Like no motor control. It's millions of views, and I think he takes like this syringe, and he's just totally fine. So, like, what would your reaction be to that?
So I cried when I saw that video. I absolutely did. I bawled like a baby. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. I've watched a whole bunch of episodes like that with smaller children taking CBD oil for, um, tremors and shakes and, seizures, and it's so, inspiring. Those are the videos that inspire me to kind of keep going, to keep chasing the work that I'm doing, to keep looking for new medicines to help people and to create those medicines. It's
Yeah.
it's 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 shocking. It's shocking. If you've never seen it, I definitely suggest showing that video to anybody who is a non-believer of cannabis, or anybody who might think that cannabis is just for recreational purpose. Show them those videos. Let them see people returning to a quality of life that they may have never even had, just because of the ability to have access to this medication. It's outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, like I said, like we've been saying, it's really changed a lot of people's lives. There's a lot of videos like that online. Sometimes cancer, like kids, unfortunately, kids with cancer, for example, like no appetite, and all of a sudden they take THC pills or whatever. I mean, they're taking extremely high doses, but they're taking it and then they want to eat again. They want to, right, and they become more themselves. And I've seen that a lot, and it's absolutely miraculous, like you're saying. But where, why isn't it that we give it to like more patients like that? Is it just a lack of research, or?
Well, is it a lack of research? Is it those patients who don't know that they have access? Is it the doctors who won't give access? I think we're also still under, under a schedule on this drug that needs to change. I mean, everybody is yelling for descheduling. Some people are yelling for Schedule 3. Whatever the case may be, and however America decides, I feel that this isn't going anywhere except for into mainstream. The pharmaceutical companies are preparing. CVS is preparing. Walgreens is preparing. It's going to be on the shelves whether or not we get to a point of agreeing altogether, which I don't think America ever has. I mean, you can tell by our voting patterns that we're not 100% on one topic with each other at all points. And I think that that's the freedom of voting and the allowance of the people. That's the voice of the people. That's what I love about this country, is if we say that we want it, we can make it happen. It's our country. It's our voice. And I think that at some point we will see federal deschedulization. I think we're going to see a big move from large pharmaceutical companies to continue working with all of these genomics and genetics experts in the field, other people who are creating this medicine and trying to prepare it, people who are showing through research and studies and publishing papers on how good these effects are and how well cannabis is working in specific areas. That's what we need. We need that consistent research. We need all of this evidence to continue to come out into the light. United States basically put essentially a 60-year hold on cannabis and cannabis education when they did the Marijuana Tax Act in the 30s, and then disappeared all of the research during the Reagan administration, lied to us about them using cannabis in drug trials and how they used it on soldiers, including LSD as well. And so we see a lot of things that were done behind our backs, done without that allowance for us to explore as a public. And now, I think now is our time. I think America's trying to make up for all of that time in the education and research. And I think that that's why it's such a hot topic, on top of the fact that there's a new industry here. I think a lot of people are looking for that education that was missed or might have been taken away.
So in terms of people, voting, trying to get cannabis legalized, either recreationally, medically, there's a lot of different restrictions on it, various laws. But a new movement that's come out is a lot of people are trying to get psychedelics legalized too, like magic mushrooms, MDMA, etc., because of their proven use in different therapies. And similar to marijuana, people are really seeing benefits in it recreationally, medically. Some people, with PTSD for years will come out all of a sudden, life-changing experience, perfectly fine, right? Like,
Again,
yeah.
again, another situation where dosage is quite important to the user, the the consumer's background, their medical background, their diet, their daily life. A lot of these things are going to play into that role, and they're going to. You have to look at the body as a whole. You can't just say, "Okay, I'm going to slam this in there and we're good." It's not like putting gas in your car and hitting the pedal and you go. What about the oil? What about the wiper fluid? What about everything else? The whole car needs to be ready for the road. And so when you talk about the body that way, where I've seen psychedelics specifically is, like you said before, in terms of PTSD, microdosing psychedelics, allowing for the release of PTSD in small amounts. Does it work? Yeah, it works. And that's personal experience talking there. Do I provide psychedelics to people? I have 4 different types of syringes available on silberhaze.com full of psychedelics, and they are worked with a mycologist that I know. We keep them in very sterile conditions, and we do our testing on them. I provide certificate of analysis on everything. No one can purchase anything off of my website if they're in specific restricted states or underage. So I think that if you see people like myself who are researchers, but also people who are trying to provide this product to people to help them heal, we're doing it in a very thoughtful way, a very legal way, and a way to continue to focus on keeping these products in the proper hands. I can go onto my website and cancel an order just because I don't like the person who ordered. I have the right to do that. If I don't find that the person who's ordering the product is possibly if I think they're going to misuse it, I'll cancel their order and write them a letter and say, sorry, here's your refund. I don't feel like you're going to use my product correctly. So I think developing that ability in terms of looking out for each other and helping to avoid misuse or underage use is one of those things that we as a society need to have trust as well as checks and balances. So there has to be something in place.
Well, it's kind of like the bar, right? Like a bar has the ability to reject a person, cut someone off if they feel that the person's drinking too much, too drunk, coming too often, etc.
Trying to get with a fake ID, yep, all of that stuff. You're gonna stop them from happening. So being able to have those checks and balances, and it's funny that you say bars because I find myself thinking about every bar in America and how they're just going to translate into consumption room for cannabis in the future, because why not? It would be super easy to just have that smoker's courtyard that you used to have outside the bar and just convert it to cannabis. So when we start seeing consumption lounges popping up in all of these places and them starting to convert, we're going to also see that allowance for checks and balances. You're going to see people get stoned and then get in their car and drive away from the bar. And you're going to be like, but what? All of these DUI laws. It's all going to change. And if it hasn't started to change, it will change. And each state will continue to make those changes. We're going to notice that as time goes by, people are going to continue to consume more cannabis. And some of those laws might change in specific areas where they notice that cannabis consumption is higher and people are still driving without getting into accidents. So they might raise the rate, like the BAL level, right? You're allowed to blow what, a 0.3 or less. So, and then that's kind of the same idea. We're going to see this new wave of cannabis law enforcement that follows with I guess with whatever the society is doing, whatever the community is doing. And is it going to be good? I hope it's going to be fair. I don't know if it's going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, nothing is perfect, if or when it is federally legalized, we can only hope for the best, but we got to accommodate as a society as well. Right. Same thing with alcohol and anything else that's a substance.
And then there's the whole alcohol thing. And we look back on the history of alcohol and you saw what happened there. And we had prohibition and we saw alcohol ruining lives and the women's suffrage movement, voting against the return of alcohol to mainstream America. And is it possible that cannabis is just another repeat of a similar substance? I don't think so. I think this is different. So I don't know if I can lump it in with alcohol. I also don't feel like everybody else is seeing it as something different at this point, because in their mind, it's another product that needs to be regulated for the adult use market. And they're just putting it right in that level.
In terms of like what you're saying, it's different. What do you mean it's different?
Well, cannabis is a plant medicine. Cannabis as a seed that can be planted in your backyard and grown into a plant. I don't see people planting those Budweiser bottles and getting full bottles of Bud off of the vine. You know what I mean? So that, in regards to how easy it is to grow cannabis, in terms of it growing, I mean, it's like tomatoes, man. Just plant it and let it grow. Simplified. I'm not talking about all of the other things that go into it, but in the sense that you can put it in your backyard and have a return on a finished product, for the most part, if done correctly, is a lot easier than crafting alcohol, than bringing alcohol to market. And some guys who have been brewing in their garage, in their kitchen, might be like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. I'll whip you up some beer. But at the same time, I don't think that you see as many people interested in creating craft alcohol as craft cannabis. I may be wrong, but I just don't see it. I see a lot more people interested in cannabis.
Right. Yeah. No. Well, it's probably because it's easier, but also something I do want to ask is in regards to places that are trustworthy online for buying something like CBD oil, right? Because I find different sites and stuff like that, just like researching and stuff, and you'll find different sites claiming different things, broad spectrum, full spectrum, and some sites are more trustworthy than others, right? Are there any sites that you would go to, right, to buy CBD oil, for example, or CBD creams or gummies?
Yeah, so I definitely would focus on going to the local dispensaries first, if that was an option. I feel like a lot of the medical dispensaries have the best products there. There's a reason that they're paying all of that tax to get that stuff into the dispensaries, and they're not just trying to sell it in the gas station down the block. So, and I feel like a lot of those COAs are accessible from those companies online. So you can look into the products, you can look into the quality of the product, you can look into what's being added to the product. Maybe there's an ingredient that they add to the skin cream and you don't particularly like it, or your skin has a bad reaction or breaks out in a rash from it. So having access to these ingredients lists from quality companies, like some of the ones that are carried in the dispensaries, are definitely the way to go. I think for people who are weary specifically of what's in their product, and you should be. And additionally, you'll see new companies starting to come out where a lot of them, including my company, which doesn't have a label on every product that we have, but we're testing it and we're getting it there. Currently, the laws don't say that I need to have a label on my seeds that say the amount of THC or CBD expected from the plant, from the seed, because the seed itself falls under the hemp law under 0.3%. So only those people who decide that they're going to use the seed for something like cultivation may be interested in that information. Do I have to provide it yet? Not yet. Am I trying my hardest? Yes, I am. And I think a lot of other companies are trying to. I just don't feel that they have as much financial support as some of the larger companies to get all of their product label information out immediately. And I think that a lot of them are trying to put a product out that they know is good, that they know is clean. There might be legal repercussions, down the road. But as far as right now, still a new industry, a lot of people trying their hardest to make it right. There's a lot of people out there who are shady too. I won't knock that. I've been around it, like I said, 30 years. I've seen it grow from making a phone call to a guy with a beeper to what you got now, and there are other sites out there. Yeah, there's a couple of websites out there that I would suggest. Some of these sites are not vetted. Some of them are vetted that exist, and I urge everybody to just proceed with caution. I will say that I just contacted leafly.com to see if I could advertise my brand on their website. But how many other brands are up there that don't have proper COAs or proper paperwork? So do a little homework on everybody. If it's a company that you stand behind, maybe you're a medical card carrier and you like to use Curaleaf, or you like another interstate brand like Air, and Air's AYR, they have a bunch of different flower in different states. I've seen them in Ohio, I've seen them in New York, I've seen them in Las Vegas. So you've got a pile of stuff out there. It's going to only get bigger. It's only going to get to be a bigger pile. On my blog on saguisilber.com, I definitely have, through the month of August, placed a lot of my thank yous for a lot of the breeders and seed companies that brought me into the fold. So you could definitely pull a lot of those articles out of August from my website. If you wanted to know who influenced me more, I've got that kind of information on saguisilber.com. I do have some information on silberhaze.com. My LinkedIn profile. There's a lot of ways to reach me if someone's looking for a specific product. I am familiar with a lot of the older breeders as well. So if someone's looking for seeds from the original breeder, I urge them to contact me. I can put them in contact with the right people, so that way you're getting the right stuff. And that's where I am in this also. I try to make sure that everybody is pointed in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have trustworthy places on the internet, and especially on the internet where anybody can kind of do or sell anything they want. So, it's good to have vetted sources and such, right? Like some of the new brands, like New Rogan, Moonwalker, for example. Like, would you trust any of those? Or
so, yeah, I would definitely want to get my hands on some of their product. For me, it's a multi-fold thing. I need to get my hand on the product. I need to try the product personally. Period. Like if I don't try it, I'm not going to vet it. That's That's number one. Number two is I need to know how long the person's been at it. I need to look a little bit into their background. Are they doing this for the money, or are they doing this for the people? You know, um, I've always done it for the people. I don't live in an expensive house. I don't live um, beyond my means. I'm not driving um, a $250,000 sports car. I've got very basic living conditions, and I've always tried to do it for the people. I think that us helping each other is part of the cannabis society, part of the community, part of being connected in this way. And I think a lot of people who are out there who are greedy, who are looking to, topple industries and empires, and they want to be on top. Good for them for having the drive and motivation to succeed, but bad for them for not looking out for the people, because when you start cutting costs and you start cutting corners also, and sometimes the product starts to, so everybody's going to have to figure out what that balance for them is. When are you making enough product? When are you making enough money? Are you doing well? Is your product selling? And so some of the new brands out there, they're going to have a hard time kind of gathering a following if they don't already. If they do have a decent following, then they probably have a decent product, because people usually are not wrong about stuff in this industry. It's not, I've seen a lot of herd mentality where it's like, okay, we're all going this way. Everybody pick up that brand and try that out. But that also changes. Cannabis in its truest form for me in flower doesn't have a following that's specific to a brand. It has a following that's specific to a strain. And so if that strain works for that person's going to chase that strain no matter who that brand is, until they find a brand that's not doing it right. And then that's the brand they won't buy.
Are there any myths you want to dispel about cannabis?
I don't think I can. I think they've all been dispelled. I think that there's a lot of stories still about different types of plants, their origins, where they come from, all of that. And honestly, as a breeder, it's always interesting to me to see the ethnobotany side of things, to see what other cultures are doing with the plant. So I say, even if you haven't heard about it, don't knock it. Do your research. Maybe you'll find out something about a particular strain that you didn't know. We're always learning from each other. I don't know if all of the myths have come to the light. I don't know if they ever will. I do know that there are ways to track genetics and to work with labs that are accurate in giving you those answers. So, and I think that for me is what's most important, is try to find those answers and try to deliver that truth, try to deliver that honesty to the public, to show them that this is what we found out, and if I don't know something, I'll say I don't know. That comes from being a teacher, man. I used to tell my kids that all the time. Said, we'll figure it out together. If you stump me, let's go figure it out together.
Yeah, and I guess one of my last questions, I have another one after this, but it would be to those who kind of look down on marijuana as a medicine recreationally, etc. What do you have to say to them?
I'm sorry. I am. I'm sorry that you see it that way. If you are one of those people who does not see the medical benefit in it, if you are a person who believes that it is ruining the fabric of society and that everybody's an iconoclast who's involved with cannabis, you might be extreme in the other direction. So I only urge people to open their minds, and even if it's not for them, to allow others to try to find their medicine. because so many of us have been healed by it, and there's no way that the world is going to stop now. There's a very large wheel in motion.
Any final words to the audience?
Do what makes you happy within proper consumption ways. Final words to the audience. I hope to see you out there blazing with me one day, and I hope you guys all have a happy holiday and you're safe, and treat the plant with respect and treat each other with respect.
All right. I think that's a good place to end off. We'll talk a little bit after the show. All right. I'm going to stop recording. All right. Yep. Any final words? Just say them. And
That's it.